The snow had been falling since before dawn, soft and steady, blanketing the small town of Briar Hollow in a hush that felt almost reverent. Streetlights glowed faintly through the thick flakes, casting halos over empty roads and shuttered storefronts. It was the kind of winter morning that made even the busiest places feel forgotten. Officer Daniel Reeves pulled his collar higher as he stepped out of the patrol vehicle, his boots crunching against ice-hard snow. At 58, he had served this town for more than 3 decades. He knew every shortcut, every family name, every quiet grief that lingered behind drawn curtains. He also knew when something felt off. "Easy, boy," he murmured. Beside him, Rex, a sable German shepherd with a graying muzzle, strained against the leash, ears rigid, tail stiff. Rex was nearing retirement just like Daniel. The two of them had grown old together on these streets. Rex had never been flashy, never one of those high-energy dogs eager to impress. He was steady, thoughtful. When Rex reacted, there was always a reason. The call had come in just after sunrise. Suspicious behavior, abandoned playground, persistent barking, not exactly a priority, more of a courtesy check. Most officers assumed it was a stray dog or kids messing around despite the cold. But Rex had started barking the moment they'd turned onto Willow Street. "All right," Daniel said quietly, scanning the area. "Show me." The playground sat behind the old elementary school, closed for nearly 5 years now. Budget cuts, declining enrollment, another place left behind. The swings hung motionless, chains stiff with ice. The slide was half buried in snow, its yellow plastic dulled by years of neglect. No footprints, no movement, no sound except Rex. The dog lunged forward, barking sharply, his voice echoing across the empty yard. He pulled Daniel toward the far corner, toward the sandbox. "Rex," Daniel warned, tugging the leash. "There's nothing here." Rex ignored him. He planted himself at the edge of the sandbox and began barking in a deep, insistent rhythm, not frantic, not afraid, focused, almost accusing. Daniel frowned. The sandbox was frozen solid, a crust of ice glinting under the pale morning light. Snow drifted across it unevenly, as if something beneath had disrupted its surface weeks ago. "Buddy," Daniel said softly, crouching. "What is it?" Rex sniffed the air, then scraped his paw against the ice, claws screeching faintly. Daniel's stomach tightened. 34 years on the force had taught him to trust his instincts. 34 years with Rex had taught him something even more important. Trust the dog. He reached for his radio. By the time backup arrived, the snowfall had thickened, muting the world further. Sergeant Linda Harris stepped out of her cruiser, rubbing her hands together. "You dragged us out here for a barking dog?" she asked, half smiling. Daniel didn't answer right away. He was watching Rex, who had not moved an inch. "Rex doesn't bark like this," Daniel said finally. "Not unless there's something wrong." Linda studied the playground, her smile fading. "You think someone's hiding out here?" "I don't know," Daniel replied. "But he's alerting on the sandbox." A pause. "The sandbox?" Officer Mark Collins asked skeptically. "Danny, it's frozen dirt and old toys." Rex barked again, louder this time. Linda sighed. "All right, let's take a look." They fetched shovels from the trunk. The first strike against the ice echoed sharply. It cracked, then resisted. The cold had locked everything in place. As they chipped away, Rex's barking intensified. He circled the sandbox, whining now, tail rigid, eyes fixed on the ground. Daniel felt a prickle crawl up his spine. They cleared the top layer of snow. Beneath it, the sand looked darker, damp. "Hold on," Linda said slowly. "That's not right." Mark knelt, brushing away more ice. "Looks like disturbed ground." Daniel swallowed. They dug. At first, it was just sand, then something darker, something that didn't belong. "Stop!" Linda said sharply. They switched to their hands, gloves quickly soaked and stiff. The air seemed to hold its breath. Then Mark froze. "Jesus," he whispered. A scrap of fabric peeked through the sand, blue, with a faded cartoon rocket ship. Daniel knew that shirt. The town had plastered it on flyers for months. Tommy Walsh, age 6. Missing. Rex let out a low, broken whine and sat back on his haunches, ears drooping. Daniel closed his eyes. The discovery shook Briar Hollow to its core. Tommy Walsh had vanished the previous autumn, just before the first frost. He'd last been seen walking home from school, this school, when the sun still lingered in the afternoons and the leaves burned orange along the sidewalks. Search parties had combed the woods. Divers had checked the creek. The town had prayed, hoped, argued, blamed. No one had thought to look beneath the playground. The body was removed with care, reverence. An ambulance waited silently at the curb, lights off, as if to avoid drawing attention to a grief too heavy for spectacle. Rex stood close, pressing his flank against Daniel's leg. "You did good," Daniel murmured, his voice thick. "You did real good." But the dog didn't seem comforted. He kept staring at the sandbox. In the days that followed, questions piled up like snowdrifts. How long had Tommy been there? Who could have done this? How had no one noticed? The autopsy revealed what everyone feared but needed to know. Tommy had not died immediately. He had been alive when buried. The town reeled. Vigils were held. Candles flickered in the cold, their flames trembling against the wind. Parents hugged their children tighter. Doors were locked earlier. Trust, a fragile thing in small towns, fractured quietly. Daniel attended Tommy's funeral in uniform, Rex at his side. The church was packed. The boy's mother, Ellen Walsh, looked like she'd aged a decade in weeks, her face hollowed by grief. After the service, she approached Daniel. "Thank you," she whispered, kneeling to touch Rex's head. "He brought my baby home." Daniel couldn't speak. He just nodded. Rex licked Ellen's hand once, gently. But the case was far from over. The evidence was strange. There were no signs of a struggle at the playground. No footprints preserved in the sand. No fibers beyond the shirt itself. Except for one thing. Beneath the boy's fingernails, forensic analysts found traces of soil. Not from the playground. It came from somewhere else. And Rex knew it. 3 nights after the funeral, Rex began pacing in Daniel's living room, whining softly. The old dog moved from door to window, restless, agitated. "You all right?" Daniel asked, setting down his coffee. Rex stopped and looked at him, really looked at him, and barked once. Daniel sighed, reaching for his coat. "Fine," he muttered. "Let's take a walk." They headed back toward the playground. Rex didn't stop there. He led Daniel past it. Down Willow Street, toward the row of houses backing onto the schoolyard. Rex stopped at number 214. Daniel stared. The house belonged to Carl Bennett, a quiet man, mid-40s, groundskeeper at the school before it closed. Daniel's breath fogged the air. "Rex," he murmured. The dog barked, short and sharp, and scratched at the frozen ground near the back fence. Daniel's pulse quickened. He radioed it in. The search warrant came quickly. Beneath Carl Bennett's shed, investigators found disturbed earth and evidence: toys, a backpack, rope. Carl Bennett confessed within hours. He had lured Tommy with promises of finding a lost ball. Panic had set in. Fear. A terrible, irreversible decision. The playground burial had been an attempt to hide the truth in plain sight. Rex had refused to let it stay buried. Spring came late to Briar Hollow that year. Snow lingered stubbornly in shaded corners, reluctant to let go. But eventually green pushed through white. Life insisted on returning. The playground was dismantled. The sandbox filled in. Grass planted. A small plaque was placed near the entrance. In memory of Thomas Walsh, loved, missed, remembered. On Rex's last day before retirement, Daniel brought him there. They stood quietly, the wind rustling new leaves overhead. "You gave him a voice," Daniel said softly. "You gave us all one." Rex wagged his tail once, slow, content. As they walked away, Daniel glanced back at the empty space where the sandbox had been. Some truths he knew refused to stay buried. Because loyalty, real loyalty, digs until the light gets in.